Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple worm bins that are already out here on the bench in front of me. And I've got my glove on, so we're pretty much set to go. The worms we're checking in on today are the original red wigglers, and I kind of put that into quotes because it's my own little kind of special name. It's not a special breed of red wiggler worm. It's just the descendants of the original batch of worms that I received from somebody when I very first started, way back in the beginning. So I did go through these sort of cycles where the population grew, then I had sort of a catastrophic crash of multiple bins where those worms were all living, and with a very few number of worms, I managed to build their population back up to the point where they now occupy 2 bins. So before we get started, I thought I'd share a couple bits of info with you about these 2 worm bins. So the systems are now 208 days old. Last time we checked in on them 14 days ago, they were just shy of 200 days old, and at that point we sort of preemptively wished them a happy 200th day in service. And after 14 days since that last feeding number 17 that went in here, I would assume that they're probably ready for more food because all they received was a banana peel and some coffee. And after 14 days, I bet you they're ready for more. As you can see, I've arranged a nice little even Steven split right down the middle style of feeding here. So we've got a banana split in half, we've got a mango split in half right through the seed, and even a kiwi. And I think this is going to be a somewhat more substantial feeding than what they received last time. And I've also got my prepared bedding on the side, my grit, which is just crushed eggshells, so I think we're all set to go. Why don't we uncover these bins and see how they're doing. These plastic covers went on during the last check-in, and prior to that, on almost every occasion, I think on every occasion for about 3, 4, maybe even 5 feedings going back prior to the last feeding, our way of coping with what appeared to be perhaps overly dry conditions was to apply moisture, to simply spray in some water. And over time, I've been applying plastic covers to all my systems, and I believe when we finally got around to feeding these guys 14 days ago, these were the last 2 systems, if I'm not mistaken, that were still yet to be covered with plastic. So I'm assuming that whatever moisture content was in the systems is for the most part still there, with the exception of whatever little bit of moisture was able to sneak around the edges and evaporate out into the air. So my hope is that we're going to have systems that no longer require the addition of moisture, other than whatever moisture comes out of the foods that we're feeding them. So it is nice to see that the top surface is nice and moist. And as you saw, there's worms out here on the surface. There were even worms hanging out on the newspaper top coverings. So it does feel to me like by having an environment in which the top surface remains damp versus getting kind of dry the way it had been when we were simply covering with paper only, the worms just have a little bit extra space to occupy, So let's dig in. After 2 weeks, I am curious to see what has become of the banana peel that we fed. And look at that, we've got some pumpkin stems. We're now at the end of October, so these pumpkin stems are probably close to a year old at this point. And I have this funny habit of just not interfering with the natural breakdown process of some slower composting materials. For some reason, the pumpkin stems always somehow manage to escape my rough handling, but I've been gradually kind of working my way away from that kind of thinking. So more recently in other systems too, you might have noticed if you've been here on my channel recently, I've been spending a little bit more time on the old pumpkin stems, breaking them apart here and there, perhaps with just 1 or 2 little exceptions, because I'm sure that once Halloween comes and goes, and that's only about a week and a half from now at this point, the availability of more pumpkin will arise once again. And I'll probably do the same thing I've done in the past couple years, which is just to go out and scavenge pumpkins. 2 years ago, I saw on a neighbor's front yard on the night before trash pickup that they'd put out all their decorative pumpkins. This was already a few weeks after Halloween had come and gone. And rather than just leaving them there for the trash man to take away the next morning, I stopped in and I salvaged a good many pumpkins, which over the course of many months ended up being a nice source of food for the worms. And then I also always take the seeds and remove them and dry them and grind them up and make a nice little worm chow out of them. And I plan to do that again today. I mean, not today, this year. Last year was similar, but it wasn't from a neighbor's house that I took them. I saw an ad that a local community center or maybe a church, I don't remember where, they had put an ad out on Facebook saying that they're haunted, or they're whatever they had set up, some sort of like a pumpkin patch sort of attraction for the local children to come and spend some time. And all these pumpkins that they had decorating their little attraction there were no longer needed, so they put an ad out onto Facebook Marketplace saying, if you need pumpkins, come and get them. And I did just that. I went out there and I once again loaded up my my vehicle with as many pumpkins as I could and brought them home. But I think I've learned my lesson. You know, the one thing I always found a little bit troubling was the fact that I wanted to hack up a pumpkin, but if it was a really large pumpkin, I would be left with so much material, multiple plastic bags full of chopped up pumpkin bits, which, you know, unless you've got plenty of storage space in your freezer, stowing all that stuff away does become a little bit of a headache. So I think this year, when the time comes to go salvage pumpkins again, I'm going to opt for much smaller pumpkins, ones that I can simply hack up into little pieces and more easily put away into storage. So that's my game plan this year when it comes to pumpkins after Halloween. So we've returned what remained of these pumpkin peels. Whoa, I mean not pumpkin peels, banana peels and banana stems. It was just funny, the stem of this banana had kind of like a gushy, gooey feel to it. And it was full of worms. So how much you want to bet that this one has the same thing going on? I would not be the least bit surprised. Not so many, but still a couple. Alright, I think just by breaking those things apart into smaller chunks, we've probably also given them a little edge up on the breakdown process. Simply exposing more of the material to worm traffic by busting it apart and making more of its surface area accessible to worms. So yeah, this to me seems like a somewhat more substantial feeding for the worms, and I got a feeling they're going to appreciate it. So this is crushed eggshell I'm putting in as grit. We've added the bedding, we've added the food, so I think we're almost there. Here's some more leftovers. So this is just another one of those mango seeds, same as what's in here. Except in this case I had chopped it into multiple pieces to try to help the breakdown process. And if you've ever handled one of these things, you'll know it's a really tough material. So for me to be able to break it apart like this into little chunks means it's probably pretty far along, because it does take a little while for it to get to that stage. And I'm trying to get myself more in the habit of dealing with slow composting things in such a way that I'm helping them break down rather than just, you know, steering clear of them and allowing nature to take its course. Sometimes it's interesting, but I mean, there's only so many times you can watch a pumpkin stem break down. And I mean, it's going to take a long time for something like a pumpkin stem to get to that point where you can start breaking it apart into small pieces with your hand, as you saw over in that other system. But in this one, the pumpkin stem does finally seem like it's softening up to the point where I could chip little chunks of it off. All right. So I'm just trying to get a sense now that we're really giving ourselves an opportunity to explore all the material in the bin. I wanted to just get a sense of what the moisture level is in here. And while it seems like it could probably be a little bit more damp, I'm not going to react to that observation. Instead, I'm just going to leave it be, because I do know that those fruits, these fruits, I believe, once they begin the breakdown process, and for that matter, just simply the thawing out process, I suspect that they're going to each add a good bit of moisture to the system, at least down in the middle, and then with the plastic coverings there, it's going to kind of contain the moisture down in the system and hopefully allow that moisture to get shared a little bit throughout the material in the bin. I suppose if we got to the point where it did seem like the system was starting to get a little bit dangerously dry for the worms, we can always come in with my spray bottle, but for now I don't think it's necessary. We've definitely done it in the past in recent check-ins, but now that we're covering with plastic, I'm inclined to just let the foods that we add be the source of moisture for the system rather than me needing to add it. That is kind of the whole idea behind putting the plastic covers on in the first place, is to just permit the system to hang on to its existing moisture versus needing supplementary moisture added. So we'll see how that goes. So we'll go one more round. Next time we come back in here, whenever that may be, we'll validate our presumption that taking that approach is going to provide the system with sufficient moisture to keep it comfortable. And, well, if it doesn't, we can always come in with a little bit of moisture, or even opt for a food that just by its nature brings in more moisture than what we've done here. But you know, the mango, I assume, is probably going to get pretty gooey and damp as it starts to break down. Probably that kiwi as well, even the banana. So I'm sort of counting on a nice little boost to the moisture once those foods start to break down, and hopefully it'll result in a fairly cozy spot for the worms to be. So that's pretty much it, everyone, for our check-in now with the 208-day-old original Red Wiggler worms, receiving feeding number 18 now after a 14-day pause. And other than that, the only other stuff I've got to take care of is cleaning stuff up, putting it away. I'm not going to waste your time with that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.